Hello, my name is Matthew Beck, and welcome to my architectural thesis reading for Performance Reflecting Stewardship, Architecture Reflecting Performance. I'll be your narrator this evening, and we'll be going on a journey of the rural 2S LGBTQIA+ experience in one of the districts of Mi'kma'ki, Epekwitk, also known as Prince Edward Island, set in the year 2035. This performance is an alternative format to performing my master's thesis titled Fostering Ecology and Community, Writing a Play for Co-Created Housing for Queer Youth at Risk, and Stewarding Festivals to Reimagine the Wilderness. The story features 3 acts, taking an interdisciplinary approach to utilizing different forms of puppetry, along with architectural design conventions. We'll be navigating the magic of making, ecological coexistence, and the nuances of narrative and interpretation through the dramatized queer point of view. Without further ado, let's begin.
Act 1. The Lodge. Our story begins at River's Rest, a queer youth rehousing project in New Glasgow, PEI. Terry, a non-binary youth, is just finishing up their tour of the property with their new guardian, Richie, for the first time. As they walk down the gravel pathway from the old farmhouse to where Terry will be staying, Terry can't help but brush their hands through the tall grasses growing in the old field. Richie, doing the exact same thing, was just finishing up explaining the rules of the property. Before heading inside, Terry asked if Richie could tell them the story of River's Rest. Now, Richie took a pained look at Terry and said, "Yep. Well, brevity is not my forte, but I can give it a go." Thousands of years of shifting lands took critters and trees hand in hand. They sculpted this island through thick and thin before more and more people started coming in. But the island transforms to our dismay as shadows from buildings bring a darker day. Beyond the headlines, a deeper pain resides, where our hearts and hope no longer abide. These stories run deeper from the young and the old. It's time to listen. Their stories unfold. The island's pain, both nature's and our own, come from a single story, a single tone. In 2016, a seed of pride began to bloom on the River Clyde. Forged with passion, sticks and stones, our performance will bring a different tone. Intertwined past and present, a hopeful pair will nurture a future, a world to share. Well, all right, clear as mud. Terry stepped into the lodge for the first time, their eyes immediately drawn to the wall in the entryway, covered in drawings and paintings, most likely done by other teens in the house. The wall reads, "As you wait, sketch a bit. You and your expression are more important than this wall." Now, Terry had been exhausted this past month after living through the experience of coming out to their parents. And, needless to say, their parents did not take it well. All of the explaining led to all of the secrets, but in the end, Terry couldn't even fully explain it themselves. I mean, how could they? They were still in the process of deconstructing a lifetime of education, belief, and stories about the queer community that terrified them. However, River's Rest did not at all feel that way. It is a relatively new place, only built about 5 years ago, and has grown a promising reputation of giving youth the opportunity to explore not only their identity, but also their passions. And right now, Terry is practicing their introductions. "Hi, I'm Terry." No, that's dumb. So Terry's still getting used to the name, but as they're about to take another attempt, they notice something from the corner of their eye. The sun is beginning to set beyond the window, and without a second thought, they set outside, drawn to the unfolding spectacle. The trees here seem different from those back home. Some of them stained from years of play, evident by the remnants of old rope and forts built within the woods. And on the shore, something putrid. Terry winced and began to approach this abandoned wooden structure, covered in rotting algae. And, whoa, from the distance, Terry spots a strange animal foraging nearby. Terry froze. It wasn't until the otter came clear into view where they paused as well. Now, neither of them wanted to take any chances, as they both bolted in opposite directions. So we're not entirely sure where the otter ran off to, but Terry ran up to the farmhouse to tell Richie all about what they saw. When Richie didn't believe them, Terry insisted on bringing them down to the river. Terry said, "Right there, next to the rotting algae tent. I swear, the otter was right there." So Richie was a little distracted by the grotesque smell of the algae and would rather make a mental note to clean that up later, and also wondered why that was built in the first place. But Richie amused and said, "Well, it could have been anything, but an otter is an unusual sight to see on the island. Come to think of it, I believe the last river otter was hunted down over 100 years ago." Terry was not convinced. Determined to uncover the truth, they continued searching. But as the night pushed on and the darkness blinded them, Terry decided that they needed to end the search today. But this wasn't over. Act 2. The Workshop. The day-to-day life of River's Rest is nothing to write home about. On a typical morning, Terry snoozes through their 5th alarm before dragging themselves out of bed. The house is quiet. Until the morning shifts into a battleground of determination, wits, and sheer willpower as everyone scrambles for a hot shower. Their adjustment to River's Rest has been less than optimal. Since growing up, Terry's parents and community carefully censored gay and trans voices. But in their first month, they got to know 2 people really well. Their first friend was Mandy. She is a 17-year-old alternative dyke who holds the description with power. She kept the sides and back of her head shaved, but the top is a roaring ocean of fluorescent pink. She embodied everything Terry's parents disapproved of, and was the most welcoming and inviting person at River's Rest. The house had so many different little rooms to spend time in. There was a loft with windows all around to look and soak in the views. And off one side of the loft, you could see the kitchen and its own dedicated room so that teens could bake and cook. And on the other side of the loft, you could see the living room. And it was often inhabited by someone playing video games, watching TV, or scrolling on their phones. But finally, there was the library, where their friend Lisa spent most of her time. One day, during a visit, Lisa shared the story of how the reading nook came to be in the library. Richie's husband, Ray, had a tradition, an experimental project for every newcomer, and a way to help them feel at home. For Lisa, that project occurred during the Winter Solstice Festival last year. Lisa had suggested creating quiet spaces for rest, and Ray ran with the idea. They built wooden frames designed to capture the drifting snow, forming small, wind-sculpted nooks. The experiment was a mix of successes and missteps, but through trial and error, adjusting shape, and tweaking sizes, they finally settled on the perfect design that became the foundation for the reading nook. Richie spent that afternoon walking Terry around River's Rest and pointing things out, like a series of old abandoned structures from the 2027 River Clyde Pageant that was used to create a stage made of rope for people dressed as spiders to perform on. They used it as an opportunity to practice anchoring rope to beams for the new pavilion design. Along the way, they saw an old lean-to structure that held gardening bins, equipment, and bikes, which gave them the opportunity to experiment with the shape of the workshop. But in the workshop, Ray greeted Terry with, So, let's start brainstorming some ideas for this summer's River Clyde Pageant. We usually start working on the pageant in the spring, but when we get a newcomer in the house, we like to start things off with them. So tell me, has anything here stood out to you? Although Terry knew this was coming, they were still a little surprised by the opportunity. However, they thought about their first day here, when they met the otter. Terry has been checking every day for the otter, but all they could find were footprints and otter droppings. The first idea that came to mind was an excuse to build a comfy lookout tower for reconnaissance. So Terry suggested something like a treehouse near the river, one they could spend lots of time and take in the views. Ray and Richie absolutely loved the idea. Sketches of rope structures, A-frames, Trojan horses, and tree forts started to flood their minds. But Ray liked to work fast. He rarely stayed in the sketchbook for too long before getting to work. So in the following months, they all had to pitch in a little. As spring was settling in, their project was near complete. It is a sheltered lookout tower, with rope woven from the platform to the ground. They got the project done before the River Clyde Arts production team would work next week. And the lookout tower has given them lots of ideas for this year's pageant. The theme? Where Water Meets Land. Act 3.
The 2036 River Clyde Pageant. As the audience begins piling in, they're handed a pamphlet. One that reads, "Welcome to the 15th Annual River Clyde Pageant, where water meets land." Every year, I'm just going to hand Lawrence this. So every year, the pageant starts with a procession and whimsical music. The audience is not made solely of people. On sunny, beautiful days like today, butterflies flutter around as well, taking in the festivities with the dragonflies and the damselflies. Their dances seem to follow the rhythm to the music, or maybe it's the damselflies conducting the tune. The energy seems to have shifted, and the audience now watches in anticipation. Ribbit.
The confusion is cleared up as the frog now speaks a language understood by both us and the princess. "Oh, you have done it now, princess. The ocean has been calling for you for many years. Your balance between land and water has been severed. You must return to the sea or perish." A wave of horror washes over as the gravity of her situation sank in. It has been thousands of years, and the princess remembers that the jellyfish were often sent to reclaim their territories in the ocean's name. Once, land and sea coexisted, birthing children in rivers and wetlands. But now, the ocean has grown weary, pushing its borders and forcing their children into forms unsuited for land. No, she couldn't accept this. She couldn't. Although, she had never truly left the river. But she also felt she belonged to the land. The ocean, however, could not understand the nuance. The only language it spoke was. In a desperate attempt to escape the ocean, she began to climb onto higher land. She has never felt the dry sand or the discomfort of itchy grass. The sensation felt malicious. But this was the world she thought she belonged to. Yet it felt so foreign. Grass began to form in the union of the ocean and the land. The land had no idea what to do with its new visitor from the river. They had never met, and their natures are at odds, unable to harmonize. Now, there's often more than one side to the same story. To get the bigger picture, the audience must make the journey up the hill. Atop the hill, near the River Clyde, lies a kingdom in turmoil, or at least, that is what it appears to be. You see, the Lady of the Land rules her kingdom with an iron fist. She needs to, because her subjects exist in nothing but chaos. The moment the trees grow strong enough to survive on their own, that's when the bees claim a branch as their home base. The birds, they can never get along. The squirrels are selfish. And the rats. Wait! Where did these rats come from? The Lady of the Land demands order, no matter what the cost. Her rage spirals out of control. Until she realizes that she has isolated herself and is utterly alone. Is that what she wanted all along? Is her nature of destruction going to keep her in a perpetual cycle of death? The Lady of the Land typically waits years of regrowth for her kingdom to return. She'll often retreat to her spot on the hill, overlooking where the river meets the ocean. There, she spots the most beautiful princess, dressed in blue, living in the river. Even though the princess is limited, she seems to be happy and harmonious with everything around her. The Lady of the Land witnessed it all. The jellyfish, the raging storm, the transformation, and was shocked by how quickly the events played out. When she saw the princess climbing the hill, she knew something was wrong. Even though it was a death wish, she ran down to save the princess, and as ashes blew off her body with every approaching step, there was nothing that could be done but shelter the princess. It was futile, but the lady's last dying wish was that they may be reborn as a pond, and then, one day, they could meet on equal grounds. Epilogue. After the pageant season ended and Terry was working on cleanup, they ended their day like they usually do, up in their treehouse. However, it was no longer a lookout tower, but a place of decompression and sketching. Before they reached the top, they noticed movement near the river, in that very same spot where they had to clean up that rotting algae tent. It seemed to have rematerialized. Puzzled, they wondered, what is that doing down there? So they went down to take a look, and as they carefully approached, they noticed it was not the putrid, rotting algae tent that they once saw, but the giant puppet head from this year's pageant. And as they got closer, they heard rustling and whimpering. And that's where they found not just the otter, but a family of otters, snuggling and cleaning with two little pups, in the head that they now called home. The end.